After years of uncertainty and an extended development cycle, Dead Island 2 has finally made it out the door. Dambuster Studios had big shoes to fill and high expectations to meet. With the final product in hand, I can say it was well worth the wait. I did have a lot of apprehension going into the game, and I was worried that the developers had bitten off more than they could chew, pun intended. It started out a bit rough, with dialogue that seemed weak and cheesy, alongside an intro cutscene that didn't get me invested in the world or characters right away. However, my worries quickly faded once I got the hang of the game's combat and leaned into the comically dark world of Dead Island 2. The story goes that the zombie outbreak has arrived in the mainland United States. While this is terrible news for the people of Los Angeles and the world, the player character quickly discovers that they are immune to the virus. Yes, there is a bit of overlap between Dead Island 2's premise and the previous games, but it's not long before the game breaks away into its own thing. Dead Island 2 is definitely a long-haul game. That's not to say it drags on too long or that there's too much to do, quite the opposite in fact. But it did take a while before I found myself truly invested. It's not very welcoming to newcomers, and those that don't know what to expect from a Dead Island game may lose interest quickly. Story-wise, the beginning of the game moves at lightning pace, and it can be tough to get your bearings. Whether it's a burning resort, a sinking military vessel, or the site of a devastating plane crash, Dead Island games have no problem throwing players into the fire. This doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it does work against the narrative during the early hours. If players stick it out past the first few story missions and get to know the people of Hell A, there's a lot of fun to be had. The new setting plays a big role. Bye bye Hanoi, hello Hell A. Los Angeles is such a known quantity, and it's clear that the developers took advantage of this. Most of the characters in the game are comical, stereotypical Californians. From the eccentric millionaires of Beverly Hills to the pot-smoking surfer dudes of Santa Monica, there's a good spread. This made the storytelling and dialogue easier to appreciate, as well as the side missions, whether it was helping a washed-up rock star reignite his love for music, or helping an influencer to exploit the apocalypse for clout. I was always looking forward to seeing new places and interacting with new people. The lore in the first two mainline games is surprisingly light, with the real origin of the virus being very ambiguous. Dead Island 2 toys with the idea of the outbreak's beginning, while hinting that there may be more to the story than previously thought. This connective history plays out over the course of the game, with things getting very intense the closer you get to the finish. In typical Dead Island fashion, the game's conclusion does leave a bit to be desired, but the game achieves what it sets out to do in terms of story development. It leaves room for DLC, or even a follow-up game, without feeling incomplete. There's a ton of enemy variety which, coupled with the expansive combat mechanics, made fighting zombies feel like a unique experience with each encounter. This really was a blessing because it's not really possible to clear out an area when zombies consistently respawn, so the never-ending onslaught of undead presents a good challenge. The constant fighting also makes the many safe houses dotted around the map all the more welcome. Combat also feels varied due to the weapon modification systems and skill tree. The game does a great job of encouraging players to experiment with the different elemental types, weapon templates, and playstyles presented by the skill cards. I found myself changing weapons, skill cards, and tactics constantly throughout the game. Finding the best way to take down each type of zombie was a fun challenge, and it helped to keep each fight feeling fresh and distinct. While the game opens up with wide open horizon shots of the beautifully designed LA landscape, the game is actually much more linear than it appears. After playing through the game though, I think the focus on smaller traversable spaces was a great idea, and it was executed really well, giving exploration a far more intimate and solemn sentiment. It felt like this allowed the developers to focus more intently on the people and the places within Dead Island 2's world, giving them a chance to tell the stories that would have otherwise been overshadowed by a game to the scale of most modern action RPGs. The Dead Island franchise is more alive than ever with Dead Island 2. The game doesn't just aim to survive, but thrives with its immersive world, endlessly engaging combat, and memorable characters. While the narrative does leave some meat on the bone, it does a great job of setting itself apart from the previous games by delving into the origins and mysteries of the virus itself. While Dead Island 2 is far from perfect, it is a worthy sequel and perhaps a clean jumping off point for the future of the series. And that's the end of this review. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, why not hit the like and subscribe buttons and give the bell icon a tap so that you're notified whenever we've got new stuff. I've been Chris, you've been gorgeous, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, cheers my dears.